This is Joanne Culbertson Jeffries on Monday, August 1st, 2022 at approximately 1:50 p.m. in Riverton, Wyoming. Loren, first, thank you so much for being willing to add to the history collection of the Washakie Museum and Cultural Center in Worland, Wyoming. We have two goals. First, our class of 1960 tells what life was like for kids and teenagers in Worland from about 1941 to 1960. The second goal is that we share how growing up in Worland impacted our adult lives. First, Loren, what is your full name?
Loren Edward Laird.
Was there any other name or nickname that you were called when you were growing up in Worland?
As you well know, I was called Lorney.
Yes, it's hard not to call you Lorney.
That's fine.
Um,
Aside from that, when I first talked to Rick Williams out there, the first thing he asked me is, do I still go by the name of Lorney?
and that's neat. I think that's a good name. You've had it for a long time.
Yeah.
Were you actually
Williams, the rocket science, I mean.
Oh, were you actually born in the town of Worland?
Yes, I was. It was
They're
called
in the hospital
now. Yes, I was born here in 1942.
Okay. Now, was your home in town or located outside the city limits? And if so, where was it?
I was born on what's called the Laird Farm, 2 miles east of Worland, in the hometown, in the home place.
So you were born right there in the home itself?
Well, I was born in the hospital, but that's where I was.
Oh, I see. That's where you lived, is out there.
Yeah, yeah.
And are you living on the same place now that you did at that time?
I am.
In the same home?
Yes.
Now, thinking about your area, what do you, when you close your eyes, what do you see about your surrounding area right out there, Lorne?
Well, right now, they're harvesting malt barley outside the windows. That's what I can see right now. If I close my eyes, I can see empty fields of malt barley being harvested with John Deere combines.
So you have a lot of fields right around. Do you see the mountains and things from your home?
I can see the mountains if I step outside. Yes, I can see the Bighorn Mountains towards Ten Sleep, and I can see the Owl Creek Mountains, and I can also see the Wind River Mountains from where I.
Sounds like an absolutely beautiful setting, Loren.
It is.
Did you have a lot of fun out in the hills as you were growing up?
Yes, we spent most of our time outdoors. I had an older brother who you remember was Gene. He was 1.5 years older than I, and we spent most of our small children going together. Mary, would you hand me this picture, please? I'm going to show you a picture.
Okay.
If you can see it. I don't know, can you see this? This is a picture of Gene and I.
Oh, cute.
Is it out fishing?
Oh, we're outside playing simmer outside the house. That's
oh, for heaven's sakes.
That's how we looked, and that's what I did for my the youngest partner until school, yes.
Oh,
Mostly.
how fun. Now, before we started this recording, you agreed to answer many questions. So do you have any memories of your childhood prior to starting first grade, like from 1941 to 48?
I really don't. It's hard for me to remember. I was a little kid, that's all I can say. And I had a happy childhood, so yes. And I played with my siblings and friends if I had any, which I really didn't have until I probably started school. So,
how many siblings did you have, Loren?
Okay, I have my older sister, Julie, my older brother, David, my older brother, Gene, and my younger sister, Penelope. So there were 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls.
So you had a lot of siblings to play with and entertain each other.
Yes, we did, Johnny. Yes, we did.
Now, when you started school, where did you go and did you ride the bus in? From 1948 maybe to 1953 for elementary?
I did ride the school bus, and the first grade was in the Watson building, and Mrs. Birkenkamp was my first grade teacher. I don't remember any more after that until we got to the third, fourth, and fifth, which was in the Emmett building then.
So you went to the Emmett building then in third, fourth, and fifth.
Yes, I did.
And
And
do you remember
that-
anything about the buildings or the teachers?
Don't remember too many teachers in then either. Until then, I went from there to junior high. That was the sixth, seventh, and eighth, I think, when I went over there.
Okay, and that was approximately 53, 54 to 56. Was there any teacher in that time that was significant in that you remember?
In junior high, two or three teachers come to mind. My seventh grade teacher was a man by the name of Chuck Donahue. And he was the first male teacher I think I ever had. All the women before that had been women teachers. So he was the first male teacher I had. Sadie Netterbett taught math, and she was an eighth grade homeroom teacher. And I really liked and admired her because she wouldn't let me flunk. No matter how hard I tried not to do anything, Sadie Netterbett made me learn it. And so I'll always remember and respect her for that. There was a real lively not a young woman, her name was Charlotte Young. She was a teacher. And then I remember the Kisters. There was two or three Kister women. There was a librarian, a teacher, and someone else, I think. I don't remember. I always thought they were kind of mean. I don't know.
Yeah, they're very strict.
Yeah. And Joe Killen, of course, was there, and he was the teacher, and he was also our football coach. It was the first time we were allowed to go out for organized sports when we got to junior high. So I played football in the sixth, seventh, and eighth grade for Joe Killen.
What a nice memory. Did you fill your time after school with activities, or did you have to go back to the farm and help?
Usually I had to get back on the school bus and go home and do my chores, yes. Farm
Did
chores,
you-
farm chores.
Did you participate in 4-H or any other activities like that?
4-H, clear up until I graduated from high school, yes.
What projects did you have in 4-H? What did you
Well,
start with?
We had pigs we showed and raised. We had beef cattle we showed and raised, and we used sugar beets and grain. Malt barley was a class or a grain that I took, a project that I took. Those along with my brothers, we all shared in that same thing, but that's generally what we raised.
And you're still raising malt barley.
Yes, that's one of the money crops around Worland now, yes.
Oh, awesome. Well, now moving from junior high, did you have anything you'd like to say about the high school time from 56 to 60 and any of the teachers maybe that followed us there?
Moving into high school, in what we call the old high school, you remember how that building looked? It was kind of dark and stark looking to me. There was no real lighting or colors in there. We all just went to our classes. I initially, the farm kids all went into FFA with Mr. Lowe taking them, but I didn't stay in it very long. And I was looking at the annual the other day, and there was a lot of farm kids, it seemed in our class, that did not take FFA for some reason.
Really?
But there were a lot that didn't. And I was one of those. I went the first year and then decided I didn't want to do that. I didn't think I was going to be a farmer for some reason or whatever. And so they made me take my mom wanted me out of there, so she changed me out of that. So
What did you take instead? What were your favorite
Oh.
classes?
I liked Mrs. White for some reason in English class. And what was I'm trying to think of the name of the science teacher we had when we were freshmen and sophomore.
Schwartz? Mr. Schwartz?
No.
Brooks?
Was it Brooks?
Yeah, Asa Brooks.
Yeah, I liked him. He was a funny guy, but he liked to teach, and I could learn from him. And the math, of course, was Joe Kidlin and Roy Schwartz, I think. Oh, and then Ray Harrison showed up.
Ray Harrison.
That was my algebra class I took for him. And I was reading Kathy's little thing, but I didn't get that far in math, so I wasn't worried about that. But I remember speaking of the science class, we had to take science, and Roy went in there. It was Schwartz, right? He sat you down, and he decided if you were going to pass his class or not. And you remember going to his classroom? You had that cabinet and stuff in the front room, and there was chairs, and then you went behind there and did the experiments and stuff. So he gave you some tests, and if you didn't do those tests, then you had to go sit in your desk, and the people who passed those tests got to go back and do the experiments. And what he did was he said, if you attend class every day and don't cause any trouble, I'll give you a C. So that's what we did.
Oh.
That's how I got through that class. Yeah.
So you don't feel that you were really taught much chemistry?
No, I wasn't. It was his choice. I mean, he did not tolerate people who couldn't learn what he wanted. He decided himself if he could do it or not. So generally there were like out of a class of 20, there might have been 10 or 5 maybe that was good enough. The rest of us sat in their desks and didn't say, if as long as we attended, didn't miss. That's what we did.
Boy, how things have changed, right?
Yes.
Now, you said that you weren't involved in the FFA, but you did in 4-H, and you continued those projects. Did you take all the projects all years?
Yes, I did take them, and I actually belonged to FFA. I did not attend the classes, but you could still belong. So I was
okay.
was a member of the FFA chapter or whatever, but I did not attend the classes. So yes.
Did you get to travel with a judging team or anything?
No, I didn't. I say I wasn't taking the classes, Joni. So you had to be in the classes to qualify or to do the judging. I was just a member.
Well, now, while you were in high school, did your parents, were they involved with you? And I know they gave you a lot of support.
Yes, actually, they were always involved in my brothers and sisters and all the events that we did. Mostly they helped or advised us to do whatever.
Okay.
Now I have one thing I would like. I thought this up myself, and I was thinking about Kathy when I was doing this. And right now there's ethnic groups and there's prejudice and people going along and everything. I don't know about you guys, but we grew up with 2 ethnic groups I can think of were Mexicans and the Japanese. And I never thought of them other than who they were. They were never anything else, but I never thought of them as Japanese, or I never thought of them as Mexicans. They were just my classmates and people I knew. That's how I felt about them.
I agree with you 100%, Loren. And it's, they were never segregated in my home, in my life, in my mannerisms. And I think it was wonderful. We weren't exposed to that dislike or hatred that many people were.
No, I mean, I felt they were just who we are to me. Exactly. Inclusive, that's right. And of course, they were my friends and classmates, and I played sports with them. I dated them. I went to school with them, and whatever else we did when we were there, they were just the same as us, as far as I could tell.
That's a wonderful memory. What about the experience of growing up in Worland? Did anything create an impact on your life? For example, your choice of occupation or hobbies, where you're living?
Well, growing up in Worland, I thought was all right. I enjoyed, well, actually, I'm still here, so what can I say? But yeah, it was a good town to live in. The only time I actually left, I went to the service for 3 years, and then I went to college. And other than that, I've lived here all my life. And to be honest with you, it's changed a great deal. The town is less than it was. We're not as important. Like you was in the notes here, we were the eighth largest city in the state of Wyoming. We're not now. And but yes, that was a wonderful place to live. And we're going to get into those questions about seventh. We're past the seventh and eighth. Let me see where. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Here's were you involved in youth activities both in school and outside of school? Well, 4-H was an outside activity, so yes, I did that. Did I participate in district and state gatherings and competitions? What does that mean exactly? In sports, I did, but
Okay, yeah, like in sports and in your 4-H where you were involved in that and FFA. Were
yeah,
you part of the bus driving group, Lauren?
yes, I was. I drove a school bus for 2 years, my junior and senior year, and yeah, that's a good question. I forgot
Where
about
was your route?
Well, it was my area where I lived out here east of Worland mostly. So I picked up the kids in my neighborhood that I knew who was. That was my route. Yeah. And
And as you,
did you have any jobs as an jobs? Of course, was working on the farm. I never did anything else but what I was told to do on the farm. What style of clothing did children and teenagers wear? Well, Levi's and shirts is what we always wore, and tennis shoes or regular shoes. That was the clothes that we wore. Of course, when we went to church, we had to put on a sports jacket and a shirt and a tie, and the cleanest pair of pants we could find when we attended church on Sundays. Television. My granddad had moved to Worland in the early 50s, and he had a TV. I can't remember when we first had our television out here. And when it did get it in, it was like there were two channels. I think there was Casper and somewhere else. That was all we had to watch. And we didn't watch so much of it at that time. We were still busy at our outside activities and doing other things. But we were watching TV, and I can't. If you told me, did I see something, I'd probably agree and say yes, it is. The first TV, and it was all in black and white, of course. And so going from that.
you mentioned your grandparents, Lauren. Can you tell us a little bit about your grandparents and how they came to our area and what they did?
I can do that. They didn't have much to do in my life, really. My grandfather was already real old when I was born, and I didn't have much to do with him. But anyway, he came here. The Hanover Canal Company and the Lincoln Land Company were advertising land to be farmed if you came to Worland and worked for the canal company. You had to work for the Hanover Canal Company. And if you worked for the canal company, help them digging the canal, then they would sell you the farm so you could farm. And yeah, but Mary just gave me a picture. I don't know if this is in the museum if you've seen it. But there's a picture of my granddad in the middle there, and they're one of the canals that they're digging on. That was one of the things they had to do. And he came in 1902. He had a wife and two children. He got off the train up around Powell area up there, and they brought their wagon and stuff down to the Worland area, and they settled here. This farm here, he's the one that he decided he wanted in this area where I now live. Is still a family farm, and he farmed until he found other successes, and then that was it for him. But he had a great influence on how we did and why we were here. Yes.
Now, what about your parents, your mother and your dad? Obviously, they were born. Your dad was born there. What about your mother?
The house I live in now, my dad was born in 1909, and my mother was from Denver, Colorado, and she had a sister, an older sister, who married some beekeepers by the name of Rothfuss. And they would come to Worland. His name was Herman Rothfuss, and he had bees. And my mother was a part of four. She had three sisters, four girls in her family, and they're very austere. My grandfather, she had divorced him early on, so they were raised. And as soon as they got of age, she threw them out. And so my mother came to Worland in her high school years to stay with her older sister. And that's how she came to be in Worland. And that's how my dad and her met. And then he was going to college. He was trying to be an engineer at Utah. And she was, the old phone company, everybody worked down there and plugged it in. She was working for the phone company. Yeah. And so that's how they met and came to be here. And after they were married, he farmed, of course. Then they had the Worland garage, if you remember that, and when they sold Buick, Pontiacs, GMCs, and Willys Jeeps. And my dad managed that. And we had a farm farmer whose name was Jack Smith that came out here and farmed. And all us kids worked on the farm, and we worked for Jack Smith and learned how to farm or whatever we did do. And then there's the thinking, remember, peer pressure was a lot to do with us in high school, if you remember that. You had to belong to somebody. And you had the athletes, and you had the normal kids, and then you had the brain kids, and whichever group you belonged to, you were the most comfortable for. I was part of the athletics, but I like to belong to the group that you were in, Joni, too. Just a common everyday.
Right. Just
And
a fun group.
I wasn't comfortable with Grant Fuchsia and Ricky Hake too much, but they were friends anyway.
I remember the terms they used. We had the apes and the tea drinkers.
Do
you remember?
I didn't want to say that, but that's what
I know.
Yeah.
And you're right. They were very cliquish on some of those. And some of us just didn't fit into either one of them.
No, and that was all right. I like being an athlete, of course, but that was the extent of it. One of the things that at our class reunion, I don't remember, I didn't say anything, but all my friends weren't there. They were dead.
That's a harsh reality.
It is. Dick Yingling, Jim Storr, Sonny, Larry Kitchell, all those people.
That you knocked heads with on the football field.
Yeah. And Jack Iverson.
I was going to say Jack was there. And
Dean Fredericks was there. Yeah. And by the way, your title thing of the people, whatever, I didn't see Joyce Taylor. Why was she not there?
As I understand, Joyce had a grandson graduating from college the same time, and she felt she needed to be at his graduation, which I agree, because he only graduated once. And she's hoping that maybe we'll have a mini reunion or some kind of a get together down the road, just a coffee or something, and she could come to that and see everybody.
Okay, well, I mean, you have the names, you Kathy and Joan Walsh, that's the world part that did this, put this together, is that correct? And I saw her
Yeah.
name, she wasn't at the class reunion.
Well, it's my understanding also that I don't know if she's home yet, but the reason she isn't doing some of the interviews is she's in Paris with her son.
Okay,
She celebrated her 80th birthday in Paris.
yeah,
So we asked her to send pictures. We haven't seen them yet, but we want to see some pictures. At least at the Eiffel Tower on your birthday.
now okay, do you have memories of any of the townspeople and what they contributed to our community? Sure, what-
They're asking you. Let them ask you.
oh, you're supposed to ask me, Mary said.
Oh, that's all right, Lauren. I'm listening with
Okay,
interested ears.
there you go. Sure, I remember, well, of course, the school teachers that were adults that, I mean, Charlie Roberts was important to me, and he was a figure, but as you recall, we were state champions in football, and I have that football. But anyway, I played for Joe Kenlin, and before Joe Kenlin, there was Carl
Selmer?
Selmer, and he was the winning football coach, and they had won the state championships for like 5 or 6 years. Worland had it was an unusual time, and then we got to high school, and Carl Selmer went to University of Wyoming to work for Bob Devaney along with Jack Aggers, and Joe Killen, of course, got the job. And I'd always played for Joe Killen. I never had any of the football coach. But we couldn't win a championship with Joe Killen. Our sophomore and junior years, we were not able to win a championship. So I assumed the school board, whoever they were at the time, decided that Joe couldn't do it. So they fired Joe Killen and hired a guy by the name of Wimp Hughley,
I remember him.
University of Wyoming. And we did win the championship with Wimp Hughley. But Joe Killen, I thought, and still do, was always be my coach. So that's one of the people that influenced me. And other people, well, I can't think of who they are, but sure there was a lot of adults that came into our lives that they
Well, you mentioned that your father had Worland Motors, and just thinking about Main Street and all the businesses, do you remember some of the businesses and those people that you remember down there as you think about Main Street when we were in high school?
I was thinking, you remember all the filling stations we used to have, one on every corner. And,
Yes.
then there was a Worland garage, and there was a Bighorn Chevy, the Nielsen's had it. And then there was a Ford garage down on the end that, what were their names? You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, he was in the bank.
He rode in praise, the big old guy. Barney's own.
Barney, yeah. Barney Motors.
And I remember stores like J.C. Penney's and Marvin's and grocery stores. And
do you remember the Hudson dealership?
I
Mr.
do.
Sprague?
I do. Yes, I do. And Ernie Cook owned the Cadillac dealership. Remember that? Gerald Cook's dad.
Gerald's dad. Uh-huh.
And there was a John Deere. There was a Farmall. There was a Ford tractors for sale. There was a feedlot we had downtown, the sales barn, and then we had what was the name of the dairy? We had a dairy.
Snyder's Dairy, and then we had Meadow Gold, wasn't it?
Yeah, remember Meadow Gold? Yeah.
Mhm.
And then there was the tickets hotel.
Old hotel.
Tom G.
Oh, Mary wanted to know if I want to talk about the old hotel. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That would be interesting because very few people don't know about it except for our age.
Yeah. Of course, they had a restaurant, and it had a bar and we stayed there. I mean, of course, we didn't stay in it, but we went to the restaurants and the bars. But yeah, there was the hotel and
Well, do you remember the businesses in the hotel? I know Geis has had an office in there, as I recall.
there was a barber shop in there, remember?
Uh-huh. Silvers, was it
Bill
Foster
Silver.
Silvers?
Foster Silver's had a barber
Oh,
shop in there.
where's that coming from?
And then there was a real estate in there, I think, or something like that. But I don't remember who that was. Yeah, and then of course you had the banks. You had the Farmer State Bank and the Stockgrowers Bank at the time when we were kids. There was only two banks, and of course the Cowboys went to the Stockers and we went to the Farmers, and the people that were involved in those. Gray, Vernon Bauer, who was over in the Stockman's bar, Kathy?
Was that Muirhead?
Muirheads and the other, what was
Kraus, Del Kraus.
yeah.
Was that right?
Yes, Del Kraus and the Muirheads ran that bank over there. Yeah, yep. And the businesses probably there was more clothing stores and jewelry stores. You remember there were at least 3 jewelry stores at that time.
And
There was
Swenson down by
Swenson.
the Kirby.
Yeah, and then there was well, the one that Scott Paris bought. Who was that one? Remember that one? I remember there was.
Didn't he buy Swen's?
Oh, yeah, maybe he did. But there were 2 others as well. And I can't even think of the name of it. But I remember there were 3 jewelry stores. And then remember the drugstore we used to go in?
Oh, Reed's and Graham's.
Yeah.
What do you
that?
remember about the drugstores, Lorne?
I like the malts. And I like the little bookstore where they had the revolving bookstore where you could buy your little paperbacks. I enjoyed that. Oh, yeah. Library. Damn right. I went to that library since when I started reading until I couldn't. And I read every book in that library, I thought. And I didn't ever really try and sneak any past her. But I was late on a lot of them. So she sometimes would get on that. But I enjoyed that library down in the remember how it was down in the basement there? There were just tombs of books all over the place. But I read a lot of books out of that library. Yes, I enjoyed that place. It was my favorite place.
Yeah, Kathy had to remind me that the library was at the courthouse. I'd forgotten that.
It was in the basement.
Right.
Yeah. I remember that. Enjoyed that. And well, ask questions.
I just think that having listened to what you said about all the townspeople and stuff, tell me a little bit more about your home and maybe some of the traditions that your family had. And if so, do you still have any traditions with the girls?
Well, let's see. I graduated from high school, and at that time, my dad was on the board of trustees. He'd been appointed by Jack Gage, and so everybody that what's your son doing? What's your dad doing? Are they going to this school? Are they going to that school? Are they going to the military or whatever it was? And my mom was too embarrassed to say, well, the dummy isn't doing anything. So she arranged for me to go up to University of Wyoming, and she arranged for me to be a roommate with Ricky Williams because she thought he would be, he would help me out, which he did or didn't. So I went to University of Wyoming, and I should not have, and got thrown out of there for a couple of little things that, well, one was playing nude on a tennis court.
You mean they were opposed to that?
Remember where Wyoming Hall was?
Yes.
And then right across the street was a tennis court. And we were there partying, and the bed come up, and hell, I said, I'll do it. So I ran down there and took my jacket off and knocked the ball over the net twice naked, and then ran back up into the Wyoming Hall. That
They
didn't go
frowned
well.
upon those activities.
That didn't go well with her. So anyway, after I left there, then I came home and farmed, and then University of Wyoming, I mean, Casper College had a wrestling team. So I applied for and I made the wrestling team at Casper College. So I went back to school and I was doing pretty good there. And for some reason, they ran out of money and they took away the wrestling team. And there was a basketball team. His name was Sweet Erickson at the time, was the coach, and he had this real great basketball team. So he took all the money and threw every other sports house. So I just the hell with it. So I came home, and at that time, that was in about 62 or thereabouts. The draft was coming. The war hadn't started yet, but we were all eligible for the draft. So I came home and decided I joined the Army and went to Fort Ord, California for basic training. Got a real good MOS, which is military occupational status. It was in electronics. And they sent me to Germany. And I was there for about a little over 2 years. I served in Germany. I got out of the military in 63, came back home, went to work on the farm. And they wanted me to go back to college. So I did, using a GI Bill, of course. And I got a degree in political science because somebody said it was the toughest classes down there you could take in the liberal arts college. And so I did that and I graduated from University of Wyoming and then I came home and more or less been here ever since.
So you used your experience from the service and the college on the farm.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
What do you think was the most beneficial thing you learned in the service?
I'll tell you, the what is the sixth thing where they stormed the Capitol building? Johnny, we were all right from the first grade. We did the Pledge of Allegiance, or we sang the songs, and we went to the basketball games, and we did all that. That was sacrosanct to me. I mean, that's just how we were raised. And when I served in the military, I served with a purpose. I believed in my country. I believed in God and country. I believed in what we were doing. And when they stormed that Capitol building, I thought that was very wrong. I still do. That hurt me to see that for some reason. I didn't know what was going on there. I really felt down about that. I like to think I was very patriotic at the time, and I still am. So that was really a terrible thing for me. And but the best thing coming out of the service is I met my wife.
Oh,
So yeah.
but look at what you've had, you wonderful life you've had.
So when I got back out of the service, there was this beautiful young girl working in a Greek restaurant down there called Scotty's. And I thought, oh my. So I courted Elaine and we were married and we had 4 wonderful daughters. And she was a mainstay in my life, of course. And she died of cancer about a year ago. But yes, she was a great influence in my life. And so coming home and having married Elaine, I tried to earn a living or maintain a livelihood working on the family farms is mostly what I did. And there was David, if you remember David at all, he and I were kind of the partners, or so to speak. Gene never was a part of it. He was out of the picture for some reason. So and I'm still here. I'm living in the old home place. I don't know why, but here I am.
I think it's wonderful. Now, you said that Elaine was a Greek. Did she instill any family traditions that you and the girls still do?
I'll tell you a good story. She was Greek Orthodox, and my family in 1956, I think, they built the Presbyterian Church in Worland. And so that's when I became, my family started going to church. I didn't go to church until well after 1956, while we were freshmen in high school or something like that. So we were Presbyterian. So after I had married Elaine, and the Greek Orthodox, closest thing to them was Catholics. So they were Catholics, and they liked to go to join the Catholic churches if there were no Orthodox churches in the area, which there really weren't. So She was basically a Catholic, but a Greek Orthodox. So after we were married and we had our first child, Christina, she said, and she was going to the Catholic Church at the time. And she said, would you mind if we baptized Christine in the Catholic Church? And I said, I didn't care. And she said, will you go to the Catholic Church if we do that? And I said, no, I didn't think I wanted to do that. And she said, well, if we baptized Christine in the Presbyterian Church, would you go? Of course I would go. She said, if I joined the Presbyterian Church, would you go? What could I say? Yes. So she remained a Catholic, but she participated in the Presbyterian Church with me, and that's how we raised our children. That was one of the influences she had on me, if that's what you're looking for. Yes.
That's a good influence, Lauren. Now, what
Yeah.
about food or any of your holidays? Do you have any traditions that you do there that?
We, of course, observed the Christmas and Thanksgiving holidays that we all normally did. And the Greek holidays, they had their Sunday was different. And the Orthodox religion, if you've ever been to an Orthodox ceremonies or a church, they're really quite elaborate. They're really something. So whenever they had those, they would invite a Greek priest to come to town, and there was still a little cadre, or if you want to call it that, of Greeks that still lived in Worland. So there were enough for them. So we would go to the community hall, and another thing, 4-H. You know where we did our 4-H meetings, Kathy? Edith Haley Little House. You remember what that was for? Why was the Edith Haley Little House built? It was a community thing for the community, right?
Yes.
And
Kathy's
so
on mute unless she can open it up there and respond.
they had 4-H, they had meetings, it was a community place where people could meet.
Yes.
So I remember that. So that's where we did our 4-H. And
Well, isn't the little house still there?
yes, it is.
Yes. I don't know how is it used now?
You know, I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It went out of when they started building the community hall and other businesses. It lost its allure, but at the time in the 60s, 50s and 60s, it was a viable place for people to have meetings and parties. And I don't know who owned it, and I'm sure they had to rent it from whoever it was, but it was called the Edith Haley Little House. So
The Girl Scouts used to own it. It was, my grandfather built it for the Girl Scouts after my grandmother died. She died in June 1950. And eventually the Girl Scouts, it ended up being owned by the region, which now includes Montana. And so basically it's absentee ownership, and it has been for quite a long time. So it's
but going
a
with
lot more complicated than in the beginning.
the Boy Scouts, again, the Girl Scouts, the Boy Scouts, yeah, that was what it was used for. It was a needed place at the time.
And I remember the Boy Scouts had a meeting hall on the west edge of the Emmett or Watson building there, the one that was in the front. It was
Yeah.
a big, long building, and that's where Troop 3, my dad was involved in Troop 3, and that's where they met every week.
Okay.
Do you remember that building?
I didn't get to be a Boy Scout. So, yeah, yes, I do. I remember that building out there.
And I don't know who it belonged to or why, but that was their troop building.
Across from the building, right there, that long building there, right? There.
Yes, right.
It became a storage. They used it for storage after that.
Well, Lorne, I know you have some things you need to do. So in closing, for generations to come that listen to your story, is there any wisdom or any other ideas and thoughts that you would like them to know or to pass on to them?
The only wisdom that I gained was trying to live a positive life. And in doing that, you had to provide for your family and for yourself and for your community, and you wanted to participate in your community. I ran for political office twice in Worland, but I was a Democrat, but I like being a Democrat. So, and of course, her sister pulled it off once, but everybody knew they were damn Republicans anyway. So that's how she got away. So while the Democrats voted for it, the Republicans
No,
voted
I
for it.
interrupt. My sister
Okay.
was not a Republican. My sister is very Democrat.
And the Haleys were all Republicans. So there. Anyway, yes. And
But the Omensons were Democrats, my mother's family.
but so that was I like to participate in that in social gatherings and influence of the town wherever I could, if I could. I like raising my children here. I still have 3 of my daughters still live here. The youngest being Mary, who is currently staying with me and being my caretaker. Then I have a daughter, Sarah, who's the English teacher at the high school. And I have a daughter, Margie, who's the secretary for the sports director at the high school. And my oldest daughter, Christina, is a nurse in Casper. And I have 6 grandchildren, 3 boys and 3 girls. So that's worked out all right.
Sounds to me like you have,
Living in Worland has provided me, we have what do you call it, a boundary that protects you. We live away from the major cities, and we have a coat of armor that protects us and allows us to live our lives easier than it would be in the cities where you have the pressures of the major populations that are harming the country now. The infrastructure of those cities are losing their way, and it's becoming tough for those people to live there. Whereas out here in Worland or in Wyoming, we think we're independent of that. And if like things come down the pike and worse comes to worse, we'll still be able to, and in Riverton too, we still think we can live and take care of ourselves. And we can provide for ourselves, is what I'm saying. I don't know.
I think that's a
Okay.
good point you bring up, Lauren. We learned to be very self-sufficient at a young age and learn how to do with what we had. And I think we could still do that. But you're right, we are insulated in Wyoming from a lot of the things that those in the city see and do. And it's strange to us.
And of course, when I say that, I mean, there's Kathy sitting there. She lives in one of the metropolis, so I don't know how you do that, but yeah, I think we're privileged if we can stay here. I don't know. Worland has shrunk. We haven't got any dealerships. We have one grocery store. We have no filling stations. The Main Street that we knew when we were children, all the stores that went up and down Main Street, the clothing stores, the jewelry stores, the whatever stores, grocery stores. And when you drive in from Worland, both of you, when you come to town, you come across the railroad tracks, and God, the first block or two is just desolate, empty buildings. It's kind of sad. And
Now,
drive
one
up and
thing,
down. Okay. Dennis Bauer had the coolest little 55 Chevy Bel Air that drug Main Street. We all envied his car. And I don't know what the custom where it came from, but we all got in our cars. If you had a car, not everyone had a car. And you would just circle and go up and down Main Street. And of course, in Christmas time, they put the tree at the end of Main Street, remember? So you had to drive down, you turn around the tree and you come back down Main Street. And so I don't know who it was, but they said, yes, I did do the damn thing backwards. I go all on Main Street, came around backwards. And when I got back around, I got down to, I started at Wilson driving at the end, and I got all the way back down about the courthouse. And there was Connie Thomas sitting there with his lights on, going, what the hell do you think you're doing?
and Connie Thomas was our local policeman, wasn't
Yeah.
he?
he was watching me. They all watched me go up and down and think backwards, but yeah.
But you know, how blessed we were to have the policemen that were so understanding and they knew what you were doing was harmless.
Oh, yeah.
And who were some of the other policemen? There were three of them that used to be together all the time.
There was Tiny Earhart, there was Johnny Thomas, there was, what was the chief's name?
I'm lost it.
Carl something, wasn't it? Carl. Remember, there was a chief of police and there was like 4 policemen. Oscar McClure was one,
Oscar McClure, yeah.
and Connie Thomas, Tiny Earhart. There was only like 5 cops, I think, and the chief, whose name I don't know why I can't remember it. Yeah. So anyway, it was a summer of our senior year, maybe somewhere like that. I can't get this lie straight, but Sonny and I decided we were big enough to go into the bar. So we went into Kelly's bar down on Main Street. And at the time, you remember all the bars, for some reason, back in the 20s or 30s or whenever, they decided that the only liquor stores could exist only in one area. And that was why all the bars were always lined up on that Main Street. You remember when you were small, there was no liquor stores anywhere else except right there on Main Street.
Right.
And so Sonny and I went in there at Kelly Cook knew who we were and what we were doing. And Carl, the chief, Carl. Anyway, so we're sitting there, big time, drinking our beers, and Carl walked through the door. This was about 9 o'clock at night. And Kelly Cook would give him a 5th of pint of whiskey in a flask and give it to him. And he came in and he got the flask and his way out the door. And Sonny and I had froze right there. We were just frozen. And he walked, as he went out the door, he said, oh, by the way, you tell those 2 young gentlemen that if I come back again, they better not be here. He didn't say anything other than that. And as soon as he walked out of the door, those 2 beer bottles were still in midair. Me and Sonny were out the back door before they even hit the table. He didn't arrest us or anything. He just, that's how it was then. So yeah.
So I
Great
have a
memory.
question. I have a couple of questions. First of all, with your grandfather, tell us about how the Bighorn Basin used to be so isolated because you couldn't, in the winter, you couldn't get south. There was no road through the Wind River Canyon. So there was no train until the early 20s, I think. So how did your grandfather open the Bighorn Basin to the world?
Yeah, at the time, the railroad had already dug the tunnels and laid the track along that they were already established. So the canyon was open for that. So the governor decided to build highways, and they needed highways going up into the Bighorn Basin and connecting with the upper counties up here. My granddad was superintendent of public highways at the time. That's how he got involved in this. So they started building the highways and the tunnels. He's the one that helped them dynamite the holes in the tunnels. They had to dynamite holes in the tunnels to make the roads go through. And that's how they did it. You had to go over Bird's Eye Pass, or you had to go around through Upper Norwood to get out of the, or you had to go north to get out of the county, Bighorn Basin. So there was a need for railroads. He was the superintendent. It was his job to do it. He did it, and they dynamited holes through the canyon and built the highways, and that's just how it was, Kathy. There's a little more, but we're not going to say that.
Well, how about the fact that I always heard that he took the entire highway budget for the state of Wyoming for 2 years to build the road? Did you ever hear that?
No, I didn't. All I know was that after having become governor,
It was a she governor?
yeah, it was, what was old Robbie D. Klein? She was yelling her name out. Yeah, her husband died and she became the governor of Wyoming. Geez, I can't think of her name. Anyway,
That's all
yeah,
right. We can look it up.
yeah. And anyway, she wanted to build the highways, and so they did. As far as that story's told, I don't know that she did the entire budget. I don't know, but they did build a road. He was the one that built the roads up, all the roads going to Cody and Riverton and Lander and Buffalo at the time. You remember the old highways we used to drive up and down? My granddad was an engineer behind building all those roads. And then he went on after that. He achieved some success in the oil field. So after that, he left that and went on to other things.
The
Okay.
roads,
Yeah.
no, I was just gonna say the roads in the canyon as we know them today are the same but different than the roads that they put through originally, because it used to be a little closer to the river, I think.
Oh, there was just little 2-lane highways going
Yeah.
up there. It seemed like you looked down over the river and it was just rushing by. If you have you driven through there lately? You have, Johnny. You see where
Yeah.
their whole, all that stuff was, good Lord, it could come down at any minute now. It's barely just hanging on there.
Yeah,
That canyon could be closed in an instant. If the one little shrug or something happened, it would all close.
well, every spring they have rock slides because
Yeah.
of, we get a little moisture, and I think one of my favorite things is to drive through the canyon at winter and see all the ice falls. You don't
Yeah.
notice the water running in the summer, but the canyon's loaded with ice falls in the winter.
And the rocks are getting worse every year. They have more and more. Mary's writing me a note here.
Looking at
Okay.
the
What
time,
about?
Lauren.
A Laird tradition. Every time any of us ever went through the canyons, when we hit we had to honk at the tunnels.
Yes, in the tunnels, always.
You did that. You remember how a river came through the windows? Yeah, we always did that. Yeah. But
We
that's
did that with our grandchildren too.
Lorne, were there any impacts from World War II on your life?
the story about the the German POWs. You've heard that story? Is that
We
would
can
be
hear more.
the picture I showed you, those two little boys playing there. At that time, they were using German POWs. The farmers would have them. We had a POW camp in town, and they would sub these German prisoners out to the farms, and they would be working on the farms. And one time in the backyard here, we had a big irrigation ditch, and Gene and I were playing in it, and there were the German POWs were working the fields, and Gene fell in one of the ditches, and he was floating down the ditch, and this big German soldier ran over there and grabbed him and pulled him out of the ditch and was holding him and hugging him. And my mother was watching this, and she immediately went over there, and that big German was just crying his eyes out. And Gene was a redhead, of course, and so he was trying to tell her that he had a family back home, and one of his children were redheads. And so when he grabbed up Gene, it reminded him of home, and of course he saved Gene at the same time. If that's the kind of story you're looking for, I don't know. As far as World War II is concerned, I didn't have much to do with it, Kathy.
And your family didn't, so it wasn't like your dad went off.
No, my dad. There was a group. My dad was too old. You know, when that started, he was. First of all, agriculture. They didn't draft those if they didn't have to anyway. I mean, a lot of them volunteered for it, so we had to have farm country. My dad was too old to participate in World War II, and so and the thing. Oh, another thing that we're a part of. the baby boomers are who the baby boomers are. Where do you put us?
The
We're right
greatest
before the
generation.
baby, but we were influenced by the baby boomers, right? More or less. We participated in most of it, I think. Although we were too soon, I guess. The baby boomers were like, what,
After
45,
us.
56
Yeah.
or something like that.
Something that strikes me, and I don't know if you remember, the difference between town kids and country kids was so clear. You had the first grade, all the first graders went to your farm for a picnic at the end of the school year.
It was a family, it was a school tradition back in, so we had this big orchard out in front of the house here on the farm. It was peach and apples and plums and stuff, and a pasture. And so every end of the school year, they would come out and have a picnic for the grades, for the first grades or something like that. And yes, and they did that a long time before we got this. It was a tradition the Laird farms had provided for the school district.
And we did it.
Oh, Mary said that her class did it too. What year was that?
And Sarah, in the 90s.
In the 90s, they were doing it. So,
Well, one of the things I remember is how surprised I was to see how surprised a lot of the kids were. They'd never seen cow pies before. And then Jimmy Hagan fell into a cow pie and had to be, do you remember that? Joni, you were there.
well, yeah,
Okay.
the milk cows would go out into the cow pie, yeah,
In the orchard?
absolutely. But yeah, that all the school buses brought the kids out, and we had a big school picnic out there. That's right. That was great.
And my last question was about Mrs. Laird, who taught us singing in elementary school. Do you
Flora.
remember all of our singing classes?
Vivian. It was Vivian.
Vivian.
Laird.
Vivian, she was a Hayes. She was Vivian Hayes. The Hayes Ranch is from Thermop.
From Thermopolis.
And she married my dad's older brother, whose name was Glenn. And they had 4 children and lived here and he was my dad's apple, my granddad's eye. And he died of peritonitis from a gallbladder attack. For some reason, he got infected and it killed him. He was like 30-some years old, and he had these 4 children and a young wife who was Vivian Laird. And so after he passed away, she took it upon her. She was quite a gal. I mean, she was very independent. She was strong-willed. So she took her family and moved. And at that time, I had my dad's older sister, her name was Fern, was living in Oakland, California. So Vivian took her kids and went out there and raised them for a little while. And then she came back, and but at that, I think it was in junior high when she was teaching music, wasn't it?
I think elementary school.
And it could have
Joni,
been.
do you remember?
I remember taking classes from her, yeah. But
I think
I
it was
saw-
late elementary.
I thought it was in the Emmett building, or maybe that's just where she taught it. I'm not sure. There was a music.
But that
room
would be, Emma Building would have been elementary school.
well, 3rd, 4th. Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember some of the songs she taught?
Oh, not really. They were traditional songs, though. I'm thinking. Mary.
Cilito Lindo,
Stilito Lindo.
Santa
Oh my
Lu-
gosh.
Santa Lucia.
I remember learning all the Christmas songs in her. Remember all the traditional Christmas songs that we know and sing. She taught, and the piano. She played the piano, and yeah. Mary.
Didn't Vivian get involved in the wedding of the waters? As I recall, in Thermopolis?
How was that again?
Did Vivian get involved with the wedding of the water ceremony in Thermopolis? Seems like she did.
I'm sure she did, but I don't ever recall that. But she probably
Okay.
did. And she was politically active as a Republican. She was, you know, she had a lot to do with that. She was influential there. But she was something. She was quite an individual, really. And that was who she was.
Well, I don't have any more questions.
Is there
Is it
any
almost time
last
for your,
thoughts, Lauren?
I was looking over your questionnaires there to see if there was anything that,
I think you've covered many, many things in detail, and I think you've done a wonderful job. The last thing that our class has done together is the reunion we held in the end of May, which was very well attended. We missed several of the students or our kids that we went to school with, and felt very lucky to have the ones we did.
quite frankly, I like this class reunion. I enjoyed it very much. Everybody was just pretty much laid back, and we all enjoyed each other's company. You know, I don't know who these people are. I grew up with Kathy, then she moved away, or you moved away, and you come back, you're total strangers, but yet you weren't. I mean, you aren't. I thought, and still do think, we had a special class. I don't know if every class thinks that, but I thought we did. I thought we had some unique individuals. I thought we had good leadership. I thought we had good people. And I enjoyed being a part of that class. There are classes now that don't even have class reunions because there's no organization, or they didn't get along. But I felt very fortunate that I just liked our class and the people that were in it.
I agree 100% there, Lauren. We were very fortunate that our group had so much in common, and we worked for the betterment of the whole group, not just an individual. And it's still that way. It's when we get together, we're just back 60 years and can just be ourselves.
I mean, the people that were there were good people, and I was glad to be reacquainted with all of them. And
Yes.
especially you, Kathy, and Joan came around and kind of intermingled with, keep everybody on going, and I appreciated that too.
Well, and I'm so
I mean-
thankful to meet your daughters. And I didn't get a chance to see Margie very much, but Mary's been wonderful, and just, you raised a jewel or several jewels.
Well, her mother did anyway. I'm just benefiting from it, but thank you, Tony. Thank you very much.
Well, I told her she didn't fall far from the tree, and that never to lose her Florence.
Yeah, that's true. So I hope things go well with you, Joni. It's going to work out all right.
Oh, yes, everything's fine. We're doing well.